wrong here. So we started investigating what they use in Florida. And what they use are called frame jets. And they're on a drip irrigation line, but they're on stakes, and they spray out like this. And so that manages to mimic rainfall to a certain extent.
So it's like a little sprinkler sort of thing.
And so we have those now, and that's worked very, very well. And we've been able to cut back considerably on the amount of irrigation that we put out into the orchard. Generally speaking, we're irrigating the trees somewhere between 24 to 36 inches of water, gallons, of water per week for each tree. Since it hasn't rained, we've had to up that a little bit. But as soon as we start getting some rain, we'll scooch it back down to 24. It's just in the summertime that we're having such, it's just so dry. And in the sand, if you ever let it totally dry out, then you're in a lot of trouble getting the water. It's like a dry sponge. The water just rolls off. It doesn't even soak in. So we need to make sure that we don't have it too wet out there, but that we have it wet enough so that when we do irrigate, it will take the water. There's one other thing I want to talk to you about if you plant your tree, and that's pruning. Everybody wants to prune. Yes.
What time of the year do you plant the trees?
Good question. You plant in the fall, and you can plant in the spring. You can plant now if you follow these rules. Make sure that the hole you're planting in is very, very wet. Make sure, just the regular planting rule, but don't miss a step of it. And plant early in the day or late in the evening after it's down to a reasonable temperature.
So just don't stress it.
Don't stress it. And then at this time of year, you're probably going to have to water it more than you would, say, if you planted it in the fall or in the early spring. One other thing I want to talk to you about, and please, I'm glad you're asking me questions as we go along, because you're thinking of things that I might not cover, so please interrupt at any time. The other thing is pruning. I am fond of saying I've made about every mistake there is to be made out in the orchard. And I was real reassured one time when I heard Bob say on the radio that I was on my way to being an expert then. I haven't arrived there yet, but I got pruning happy when I was, when the trees finally got some size on them. I said, oh boy, I started pruning. Well, if you prune them too soon, the tree will never grow to its full size. And it won't branch out, and it will have what's called, I think it's called a raw tooth look, or anyway, a jagged look, so not a good thing. So what you want to do is wait 4 years before you prune. And now we're talking about the young trees, little trees like this. Probably a tree like this, which already has a couple of years on it, you can prune sooner than that. But just, don't get out there the minute it starts showing signs of being bushy and get all concerned about you have to prune it like your other fruit trees. Just don't do that. The olive trees started out life thousands of years ago as bushes, and sometimes I kind of think at least initially, they like to grow that way. So you'll have better success with the tree if you leave your pruners inside the house when you're near the olive tree. Okay? Yes.
Does that include the little suckers in the bottom?
No, you can take those. And when you take those, go inside and make yourself a cup of tea with the suckers. Okay? Yes.
How often do you water, and how long do you keep them staked?
We don't like to keep them staked that long. And when we stake them, we tend to have a very loose stake on them. These are staked a little bit too tight.
How much longer would you?
And not much. These trunks are a good size. So even if it flops a little bit initially, it'll be okay. It'll straighten itself, especially if it's growing in full sun. If you have it growing in partial shade, then it's going to continue
To look toward the sun.
Right, yes.
What about planting them with other fruit trees, and how close or far apart would you plant them?
Okay, let's talk a little bit about something that's been going on, started in Spain, about planting the trees and spacing. I know this has to do with an orchard, but I'll get back to your question. In Spain, they're running out of room. Indeed, they're running out of room so much that they're coming to the United States and buying up land to plant olive trees. And Texas is one of their targets. They're already in California. So the individual at the University of Cordova, Spain, did a lot of research on certain varieties. And the three varieties that he researched are Arbequina, Coronecchi, and Arbusana. And these trees top out at about 10 to 15 feet if you let them grow without pruning. And they came up with the idea that they would plant the trees 5 feet between trees and 13 feet between rows, and then they could harvest them with a grape store. Now, I just read an article, and this is a great place to go and get information on the web. It's called First Press, and it's out of the University of California. And the article is about spacing. So, this experiment is about 15 years underway in Spain, and I'd say about 7 years underway in California, and probably about 4 years underway in Texas. And what they're discovering is, if you plant these trees too close to each other, that, and by the way, let me just backtrack, these are trees that produce early, within 2 to 3 years. What they're finding is, first of all, you have to prune them very heavily to keep them at 8 feet, so the grape harvester can ride over them. And then the roots begin to grow into each other, as you can well imagine, having the benefit of looking at how the roots grow. And so they're now backtracking and saying no more than 10 feet. I mean, no less than 10 feet. And
So 15,
probably,
you could do 15-foot rows and 10 feet between trees.
yes, and probably it would even be wiser if you had more like 15 to 16 feet between
So,
trees.
good idea to plant anything else.
Now, you can plant other things, but just know that if you're planting a fruit tree, you need to give it some distance, because you've seen how the roots spread way out. So just be aware of that. The reason they were so excited about this is that in agriculture, you'd like to make the most bang per acre. And so this allowed people to put in 670 trees per acre. Well, you can imagine with the price of land in California, they were really excited about that, and with running out of land in Spain, they were very excited about that. Normal planting gives you somewhere between 150 and 200 trees per acre. So if you're investing a great deal of money in an orchard, you can see how you would be very tempted to plant the high density way. And what they've discovered is that's good for about 7 years, and then you have a steep decline. And so that you probably will have to go in and pull out some of the trees out of the middle, and you'll also have to do an extensive amount of pruning of the trees. Okay. Now we got far afield from the backyard. So we were talking about pruning. When you do begin to prune the olive tree after it's been in the ground for 4 years, and if you do take the suckers, I'm talking about